Get in the know. Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Wow. And just like that, there's another Vikings game let's see, we're recording this on Wednesday morning. So, carry the 4, I don't know, 36 hours, 34 hours, something like that.
Yep.
I don't know.
Whatever the math tells you. Yep.
Somewhere in that ballpark. So I guess if you get beat in that fashion at home against one of the 3 to 5 worst teams in the NFL, and you can make a case, get right back out there on the field. You can make another case that your body is a lot more sore than it will be later in the year because you're not used to taking the hits. You're probably just sore all the time in the NFL. But you get another game on a Thursday night here. And so we're going to give you our Purple Picks episode here where we make our official pick straight up and also against the spread and sort of tell you what the market is saying about Vikings Eagles, presented by our friends over at TCL, one of the world's best-selling consumer electronics brands. They have a new lineup of award-winning TVs delivering the most entertainment with stunning resolution. I've got one on right over here. Right here.
Great
just
TVs.
Off the camera over here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
It's a bunch of people on ESPN just shouting at each other about what the Jets should do.
Greeny's crying.
I got Goodell's on right now, actually.
He's crying. He's crying, too.
Goodell's on right now, too.
I don't know what happened.
Inspire greatness with TCL. And also a shout out to our friends over at 3Jack. So I think, is today we have a little company gathering over at 3Jack?
Yeah,
Looking
a little
forward
shindig.
to it.
Little shindig with the company at 3Jack. Maybe I'll see one of our bosses swing a golf swing, and then they can make me swing a golf swing and like, wait, you endorse golf things, Declan, with that, hacking it up plus 22 handicap? Yes, I do. And I go to 3Jack to get those swings in. I get the great chicken sandwich there. There's the loaded nachos. I wonder how many plates, to be honest, of loaded nachos will be ordered between the company brethren and sisters this afternoon at 3Jack. And, of course, game day specials, okay? So if you want to watch the Purple Dare, there are special beer and food specials at 3Jack. It's a great spot to watch the game, great spot to get your golf swings in. Go to 3Jack and 3jack.com.
Right. I'm going with 3. 3 plates of nachos.
Oh, if I'm setting the over-under at 3.5, and I will take the over. Over
Purple
on those
picks.
bad boys. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Speaking of, it's a good segue into our Purple Picks here. So going to ask you guys a couple just broad questions about the game like we usually do. Then we'll get into what the Sharps are saying about this game and sort of where the betting trends are, and then we'll make our picks. So question number 1, what are you most confident in as you look at this game from a Vikings perspective?
Wow. It's 2 things. One, it's you're coming off a performance against Tampa Bay, which did not inspire the masses. And 2, I still flash back to, how well Darius Slay did against Justin Jefferson last year. What I believe Kirk was like 1 for 5 on passes that were intended for Jefferson with Slay, the nearest man in coverage. I think he had 2 picks in that game. But I will say this. I am the most confident in Justin Jefferson being a part of this game for 4 quarters because I don't think that you can afford to allow things to be dictated to you the way that the second half was against the Bucs. And look, I understand that the Vikings ran 22 offensive plays in the final 2 quarters on Sunday, and I understand that that's a problem. But that being said, part of that was because were you going to the right guy? Were you doing the right things? Like, you don't get first downs for a reason. It's not like, well, Jefferson didn't do a thing, so what were they? Well, okay, but why didn't he? So I'm pretty certain that after hearing Jefferson talk in the locker room yesterday, that Justin probably went into somebody's office, KOC, and said, what really happened there when I caught 2 passes for 12 yards in the last 2 quarters? So I think Justin wants revenge on Darius Slay. I think the Vikings realize that they really allowed that game in some ways, especially offensively, to get away from them. I'm confident Justin Jefferson will be part of this game plan for not 2, but 4 quarters.
I think the thing that I'm probably most confident going in is just the weapons the Vikings have. That's probably the best way I can say this. I'm not confident in a whole lot into this game. I think it could be a potentially horrible situation that the Vikings have found themselves in, potentially dropping to 0-2. Now, Philly didn't look, after a hot start against New England, they didn't look as strong as that game carried on. They got off to the comfortable lead, and then they kind of backdoored their way into the victory in New England. However, they're still a really good team. Jalen Hurts gives them fits. The Vikings are historically, when they're big underdogs like this, which I believe they are 7-point underdogs, 7-point underdogs in this one, they don't fare too well. So I'm confident in the weapons. The Vikings have plenty of weapons. It's going to be up to Kirk to sling the football around to them.
Who were, let me ask you this before I give my answer here. I'm kind of putting you guys on the spot, but who were like two of the most impressive offenses that you saw cruising through red zone on Sunday?
49ers and Dolphins.
Dolphins, yeah.
Ooh.
I was going to say Dolphins, yes.
So the three best offenses yards per play on Sunday were the 49ers, the Dolphins, and the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can not smack the ball out of your quarterback's hand, Ed Ingram, if you're Kirk, there's been a lot of debate about, is it Kirk's fault? Is it KJ Osborne's fault? I think it's fair to, the interception on the goal line I'm talking about, I think it's fair to say we like Kirk taking more risks. I would rather him be more aggressive in general. It doesn't mean that you can't look at one of the instances where he was aggressive and say, was that the right decision in that moment against that opponent? Like, could you have gotten by not threading the needle, back shoulder throw with two defenders? Like, then again, KJ Osborne, should he have maybe just caught the ball like we've seen Adam Thielen do a million times? Like, but is that interception going to happen every single week? Probably not. If you can just not turn the ball over that many times and be a -3 turnover differential and keep moving the ball the way that they did. Now, Philadelphia, they've got some different components defensively that you have to be worried about. But the Buccaneers had a good defensive front too, and Vita Vea wreaking havoc. So I guess what I'm most confident in is the Vikings move the ball big time in that first game. Stop shooting yourselves in the feet would be the next step here. And we'll see if they can do it against Philly.
Yeah, and I think the ultimate lesson about the KJ pass, and I know we want to trust the entire team. I know we got more skill position players than, most teams. I know all of these things. But if we were to do a Vikings pecking order crossing route at the 2-yard line, who do you want the ball to go to? KJ Osborne, not near the top of my Vikings list. Justin Jefferson is. TJ Hawkinson is. And Kirk admitted, and this is the thing that's intriguing about that play, Kirk admitted that he should have waited for Jordan Addison to come open because he was also an option. And quite frankly, I would feel more comfortable with that ball going to him. KJ Osborne does what he does really well, but is he an upper echelon? I'm going to put my money on him to win, basically being double teamed. And as Kirk admitted yesterday, I probably should have led him right into that safety because at least if he gets smacked, he's got a chance to catch that ball first.
I don't know that you needed to make that choice, though. You could also just not throw that pass.
But I would rather get him laid out and have him potentially make that catch than literally throw the ball behind him. Yeah. But the point is consistency and good decisions. And this isn't just a Kirk thing, too. This is a Kevin O'Connell thing. This is both of them. You got to be smarter. If you are, yes, this offense, I think we all agree, aside from interior offensive line concerns, I think we all agree that this offense has big time potential. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah. Okay, on the flip side, what is the thing that you are most scared or apprehensive about going into this game from a Viking standpoint?
Oh, it's easy. That Philadelphia defensive line, Jalen Carter's wreaking havoc in game one.
He had the most pressures of any player in the NFL in week one. He had 8 pressures in week one.
I mean, Austin Schlottman is going to play, and I think he's going. I think a different center beyond Bradbury is going to have to play. My guess is for a while, because a back does not just come right back. No pun intended there. But when you look at Ingram, that defensive line against the Vikings suspect interior offensive line, it scares me. And if it scares me, how did Kirk Cousins sleep last night?
Doesn't he have a sleep number bed? Isn't he endorsing sleep number? I think he might have slept pretty good, actually. Judd here for sleep number.
I bet he didn't have good dreams, though.
Not at all. According to NFL Next Gen Stats on Sunday, too, the 3 quickest players on the interior pass rush in week one, Jalen Carter 1.
Oh, God.
Fletcher Cox 2.
Oh, God.
Milton Williams 3. The three quickest guys off the defensive line in week 1 were all Philadelphia Eagles players.
I think Ed Ingram and the rest of the guys on that line might want to steal a page from that Chiefs right tackle and see if you can just get away with false starts for as long as you can.
And line up like right by Kirk.
Yeah. They're lined up behind Kirk. What are you guys doing? What's happening?
We're going to lose, so we need a running start.
I will say, Schlottman, too, on Sunday, the PFF pass protection grades, he wasn't a complete train wreck. That being said, he's going up against 3 of probably the best defensive lines in the NFL. He had a 66.9 pass block grade. Austin Schlottman did in week 1 against the Bucs, which isn't horrible for having to come in on a off the bench, but I think the Eagles are going to absolutely eat up that offensive line.
Yeah, and even like we're kind of talking more from like a pass protection standpoint, but the Eagles' defensive front, when you try to run against them too, so against the Patriots, they allowed 3.5 yards a carry and 76 total rush yards on 22 attempts. So they shut down opposing teams' running games too. And the Vikings have kind of come into the season here. Hey, we're going to flip our personnel around. We're going to run a lot more tight end and fullback heavy formations, especially on first down, and try to establish the run and some of those actions so we can get bootlegs and play actions later in the game. But man, it's hard. I guess you can run the ball for show against Philadelphia. I don't know that this is going to be the game where the Vikings run for 160 yards and get the run game going for the first time in Kevin O'Connell's coaching career. But the thing that I'm actually the most scared about, I remember Kirk Cousins in that game against Philadelphia last year. I think he has definitely gotten better with the whole primetime thing, but his biggest bugaboos are primetime games on the road against really good teams, which is a hard scenario for almost any quarterback. He's not the only quarterback that struggles standalone games on the road against really good teams. Those are like the hardest scenarios, but which Kirk are we going to get, man? Are we going to get the bounce back Kirk? If this was like a noon game against the Bears, I would say, 375, 4 touchdowns or something, right?
Oh, yeah.
Is he going to come back and show you, all right, whatever mistakes I made, whatever mistakes we made, we communicated with the offense, we shored him up, or are they just going to get overwhelmed and he's going to be teeth clencher, angry guy on the sidelines? I'm a little nervous about Kirk's demeanor here on Thursday night.
I think we'll know after the first offensive series.
Yep.
Because this is I think the problem is this adversity, Kirk, right? Like if it goes wrong, Kirk, and I mean, the Netflix special basically gave us the play-by-play on, it's going wrong, I'm frustrated, and O'Connell's desperately like, no, man, it's okay. But if you look at the greats, Brady and I mean the upper echelon, Mahomes, what do? They either thrive and or forget what went wrong immediately. And with Kirk, so like if the Vikings go 3 and out on the first drive and Kirk gets smacked twice, which, hell, he might. I think that's going to be an immediate tip off because I don't know that's the type of thing Kirk doesn't recover, in my opinion, really well from.
Yeah. And of course, the counter argument is, well, he had 8 fourth quarter comebacks last year, so he clearly responds to adversity in some ways. And that's true. I think both things can be true. He does get a little, sometimes in those games where like you get hit with haymakers, sometimes you get the Kirk that just can't handle it, right? But then sometimes the team hangs in there and Kirk hangs in there and fights back. Which version are we going to get tomorrow night against Philadelphia?
This is a chance, and I am not saying that it will be. This is a chance, if it gets off to a bad start, to be a snowball game. And I feel like in snowball games, Kirk struggles really badly. Like once it starts to go downhill fast, it's like, and then he's frustrated, and then things go wrong. I also would like to see this. And in fact, I'll check this out when we're done recording today. I would like to see how many times when Kirk had a fourth quarter comeback that the Vikings actually got points on their first drive. Because it feels like it goes really bad when it gets off to a bad start.
You're saying like score early, feel good, game starts to get away a little bit.
Scripted plays work, so Kirk feels good. Now it starts to get away, but it's not necessarily Kirk's like fault or Kirk is not failing. Mm-hmm. And then, he came back. I'd be curious to see, because it did feel like a lot of the Vikings' tendencies last season was to get off to a good start, like a good first drive, and then sort of disappear. The Philadelphia game, though, to your point, Phil, from the word go was basically a train wreck, though.
Yeah.
And that's the type of game where I don't know if Kirk can completely just suck it up and recover.
Yeah, and and by the way, the defense kind of came back and shut the Eagles down in that second half, and the Vikings had chances to get back in that game. Irv Smith dropped like a 50-yard touchdown.
That was a huge play. You're right.
Kirk and Jefferson I think Jefferson ran a wrong route. So there were some things in there that if other guys do their job, in the second half. So, all right, what are the Sharps saying about this game via Action Network? So the Vikings are 7-point underdogs across most sports books. 62% of the bets are on the Eagles right now, but 66% of the money is on the Vikings. This is what it was last week, too, where the Vikings were 5.5-point favorites. Like 2/3 or 3/4 of the bets were on the Vikings, but more money was coming in on the Buccaneers to cover, which I tend to think that that's like smart people with a lot of money are coming in and saying, actually.
Yeah.
So it looks like, I guess if it worked out well for the Buccaneers last week, that trend, then it's kind of flipped in favor of the Vikings here this week. Here's what Action Network said. Last season, the Vikings rated as one of our luck rankings luckiest teams. So they have a luck ranking, like a luck factor at Action Network, and they were one of the luckiest teams in the league. And it seems that some of that luck ran out to start the new season in week 1. Even though they lost, the Vikings outgained Tampa by 87 yards and 171 passing yards. Their narrow loss can be attributed to their 3 turnovers, 2 of which were lost fumbles, which are not predictable. The Eagles, on the other hand, came out on top against the Patriots thanks to a pick 6 early in the game. Take away that pick 6, and you could argue the Patriots would have come out on top in this game. New England totaled 316 yards, which was 65 more than Philadelphia had. We think we are getting an overvalued Eagles team that's favored by too much against an unlucky Minnesota team. We take Minnesota to cover the spread and would make sure you bet the Vikings before the line reaches the key number of 7, which it looks like it's reaching 7. They got it at 8 earlier in the week on Action Network. So they're kind of echoing what old Macadac's been trying to preach to you guys here. Guys, calm down. It was bad, but not as bad as you think, and Action Network seems to be kind of echoing that narrative here.
I do think the fact that it was, in my opinion, at least bad, is not the worst thing, because you do have to go back to last season when the Vikings got absolutely their drawers blown off by Dallas and came back on a Thursday night and beat the Patriots, which was a nice win. I'm not predicting a Vikings win, but I do think there's so much momentum of the Vikings are screwed. They really aren't good. From some, we'll just go ahead and trade Cousins to the Jets. I do think it's going to be a closer game than people expect. And I do think it's overall, including from the eye test, going to be a closer game than the week 2 loss last year. I do think the Vikings are going to rebound. Okay. And I would take them.
We're not making our pick yet. Hey, calm down, guy. Calm down, guy.
I agree with this. I do agree with this assessment that I think that people who know what they're doing are probably being smart, just because it partially feels like so many, it's one game. It's a bad game, but it's one game, week 1.
Yeah.
Feels like the 3 most likely outcomes in this game are the Eagles blow the doors off the Vikings and they kick their butt. The Vikings lose very close is the second most likely outcome. And then the third most outcome is the Vikings win. Like, right? It feels like those are the 3 layered outcomes for this Vikings game, that their Eagles are huge favorites. They should, on paper, probably win this game by a touchdown. Maybe the Vikings and Kirk Cousins come close, but they probably end up falling short. And then the third option being the Vikings actually go into Philly and get a surprising win somehow, some way. It is interesting that the implied odds here are, so it's plus 245. So basically a $100 bet on the Vikings would net you a $245 win. So the point that it getting up to 8 is really interesting on the spread. But the Vikings historically too are really bad when they're massive underdogs like this. They have historically not played well. I believe they've played something like the last 10 years when they've been 7-point underdogs or more. They have lost every single game. So they haven't even made these games close necessarily either. So this just has a bloodbath, in my opinion, written all over it.
So we'll make our official. God, you guys both jump the. We'll make our official picks here if there's any suspense left over in a second here. After we shout out our friends at Minnesota Lottery with those Vikings scratch game tickets.
That's exactly right. In fact, a win big with the official game of the Vikings. You know what? The Vikings lost. Things appear to be bleak, but it's just one game. The lottery, it's the same type of thing. Look, you can win big, but the only way, just like the Vikings on Thursday night against Philadelphia, the only way to win big is to check out the scratch games right now and the official Viking scratch game. Just say this, I'm in. It's going to be great fun, and you can win big with the Viking scratch game from the Minnesota State Lottery.
Also, a shout out to our friends over at AG1. So, this has been a game changer for me over the years. About 6 years ago, I discovered AG1 products through one of my favorite podcasts, The Tim Ferriss Show. And so it's kind of cool now to be sitting here on Purple Daily and saying, hey, you guys could really benefit from 75 high-quality ingredients, one scoop mixed in with your water. It's nutritional insurance, making sure you get the right nutrients every day. Obviously, you want to be eating right as much as you can, but if you're busy, this is a September, October, busy time of year. You got kids running around, you got football games every night, all right? Friend gatherings, whatever it is. So make sure you've got that nutritional insurance to start your day or maybe to boost your day in the middle. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, AG1 is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/purple daily. That's drinkag1.com/purple daily. All right, let's make our official picks here, boys. We pick straight up, and then we give you a margin so we can also keep track of our record against the spread. Well, we're all 0-1 straight up because we all picked the Vikings to beat the Buccaneers last week. And we're all 0-1 against the spread because the Vikings were favorites and lost. So straight up, who wins this game and by how many points, keeping in mind that the Eagles are 7-point favorites? We'll start with Judd.
Eagles win this game, but I'm going to say that they win by 3. So I think it's going to be far closer than people expect. I do think there is a resiliency to this Vikings team under Kevin O'Connell that if we don't see, I'm going to be very surprised. So I'm going to say Eagles by 3. Here's my hope. My hope is that the Vikings, while they do lose, my hope is that Ed Ingram struggles enough that he finally is replaced. I think one of the saving graces of, because an 0-2 start sucks, but it doesn't bury you completely. Like your season's not done. There's now 17 games. I know it's difficult, Phil. I know it's difficult, but in 2008, we saw Tavares Jackson replaced by Gus Frerotte. We saw changes made, and the Vikings came back and made the playoffs, I recall, as a wild card team, okay?
Yep.
0-2 can sort of show you your warts, but they can give you time to put the ointment on your warts that'll cause them to disappear.
Okay.
Judd here.
Well, like if you got warts, you want them to go away, but you don't want to be
like
out
a
of the
corn
game.
Or is it a wart? How would you sort of
Well, you know how
describe
you
it?
have warts on your foot sometimes, and they
I've never
like burn them off.
experienced that.
Oh, really? Yeah, I did as
No.
a kid, and they burned them off, and they were
As a
gone. It was
kid?
fine. It was Ed Ingram-itis. So I am hoping that Ingram struggles because I just don't. It feels like they need like just something to hit them over the head like a 2x4 to get past.
I feel like
this.
that's been happening for. I get that
agree with
he's
you.
a young guy and that you got to give a guy a chance. But
I'm just saying, if you're going to go to 0-2, I feel like there needs to be some type of change made at that point to improve a position of weakness. In this case, it's not quarterback. So I think the Vikings lose. I think it's a close game, but I do hope that this causes some changes on the offensive line, the interior, I should say.
I get hangnails sometimes. I don't really get like warts.
One right now. I hate hangnails.
He's like a hangnail. It's like just it might hurt for a little bit if you rip it off, but in the long run, you want to get rid of that thing, right? That's
no 0-2
you can't have a guy that's just giving up 6 pressures every single game and confused.
And then he thinks he played well. Like he's like, oh, I played okay. I played pretty. It's like, dude, you caused a fumble.
Let's start there. You slapped the ball out of Kirk's hand at one point. Let's be better here. All right, Declan, who wins this game and by how many points?
The Vikings lose this game and the Eagles cover the spread. I really don't have a faith in this game at all. I think it's a short week. I think the Eagles are going to eat up the Vikings offensive line. could be as disastrous as it kind of was on last year on Monday Night Football. And the Vikings, yes, had chances to actually get that game back, but they still blew it. They threw numerous interceptions. They just weren't able to rebound after that horrid start. And Jalen Hurts is a really good quarterback, and I think he's going to run all over this Vikings defense too. So I think the Eagles win, and I think they cover the spread.
I think I'm going to start with spread. I think the Vikings cover the spread. I absolutely agree with everything Action Network is saying. This is a classic scenario of if you were to have set this line a week ago, it would not be Eagles by 7. It would probably be Eagles by like 5, somewhere in there. So the line is moving based on what happened in week 1, and week 1 is weird in the NFL. Not that you can't make some judgments here and there. I get it. But like the Eagles had a pick 6 to start their season. The Vikings fumbled out their ass a couple times to start their season. Is that now like the trend that we're going to take as gospel going forward? I say no. And I feel like I'm saying Vikings cover, but I also have predicted 2 or 3 times since the schedule came out that people are like, they're so scared about the Eagles. Like they throw bottles at fans and they're mean and stuff. And like, the Vikings are going to automatically lose this game. Well, we did the opposite thing in week 1 where it's like, we just dismissed the week 1 game. But in the NFL, man, like these are still professional dudes that played at, even on bad teams, that played in the SEC and, went to big bowl games and stuff. Like these are competitive professional players. The Vikings are more than that. I would be a hypocrite if I went back on my prediction from earlier this year. So I say the Vikings bounce back and they win this game in Philadelphia. I do think it's close either way. I don't know that it's likely that they win this game, but I think people are too high on the Eagles. Don't forget, too, like most teams that go to the Super Bowl and get beat, it's hard to push that rock back up the hill. I know they won in week 1, but I don't expect the Eagles to just like coast through the season here, too. So the Vikings need this game more right now. They're going to be more desperate. They're probably going to be more pissed off. And so as long as Kirk put in a full day of work on Tuesday this week, on a short week, I think this is going to be interesting. So I'm going to take the Vikings to win and cover.
3 things come to mind. One is if what you just said is going to be true, Justin Jefferson has to win his battles against Darius Slay and have a big game. And I don't care about, he wasn't, he wasn't available. He couldn't do anything. No, that's BS. He's your best player.
Yeah. Well, Jordan Addison's out there now too.
And exactly. So let's stop trying to force the ball to number 17. The other thing is, to Declan's point on Jalen Hurts, I have one name for you. I have one concept and one name. Spy. Ivan Pace Jr. Ivan Pace has the speed to help neutralize Hurts. So like that's an interesting one. And the last thing, in fact, this could be a write that down. This time the tight end catches the long touchdown pass. Because TJ Hawkinson don't drop that ball. TJ Hawkinson don't drop that ball.
Wow.
That's a terrible drop. And I will say this too, despite the box score in week 1.
You want to change your pick here? Come on, Judd. Come on, Judd. Let's go.
No, I think it's going to be close. I think there's going to be some bounce back here. And the thing about this is the box score in week 1 sort of lied. Like it sort of said, TJ Hawkinson had a pretty strong game. Well, but if you watched it, and it wasn't his fault, but if you watched it, you were like, no, not what he could have done. I think they find ways to scheme TJ Hawkinson into the role he should play. Earth to TCO Performance Center, that's the George Kittle role, not the role of a guy who loses 7 yards on his last 2 catches of the day.
I feel like you're walking right up, man. I feel like before we end the show, do you want to go back on? Do you want to pick you got the Vikings to cover?
I just think it's going to be.
Would you like to change your straight up pick here? You just got real positive there at the end of this episode.
Well, I think that's because I think it's going to be close. I think Philadelphia wins by a field goal or less. But I do think the Vikings. We're assuming, it feels like a lot of people are now assuming that there's going to be no bounce back. And I guess I don't agree. And the last thing, too, is this is a short week for both teams. Yeah. Like, yes, it's a short week for the Vikings, but guess what? The Eagles played on the road on Sunday. So it's a short
I love how
week for both
Declan's just out. Like, Declan was so optimistic and positive. At one point had them winning 11 games in our picks. one game in, and he is disgusted
he's
and done
reflective
with
of
this football team.
Yeah, but there's a lot. There's a lot of fine
Changed my
folks
mind.
who watch this show who are siding with Declan right now.
Yeah, and maybe you
there's a lot
guys
of
turn out
anger.
to be right, but I'd
Changed
like
my
to see another game, see what happens. So,
There's a lot of anger, Phil.
well, the best thing you can have then is an immediate Thursday night game to get it out of your system, and then a long weekend. And by the way, we will be live on Vikings Vent Line right after that game is over. The place to be for Vikings post game. Our takes off the top, and then we throw it to you guys. It's the most fan-friendly, interactive show in all of Minnesota sports on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. So those are our picks here. We'll see what happens on Thursday night football, Vikings and Eagles. Purple Daily, where we just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.